Samuel from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, has a question that was prompted from episode 70 on an answer you gave, and he wants to know what happens to the Holy Spirit if someone turns their back on God. Does the Holy Spirit leave?
Yeah, I would say, okay, he referenced the earlier episode. We've done more recent things that are in the same area, same theological topic as this question. So I would say, just generally, it'd probably be a good thing to do to listen to some of the other episodes. But for this one, let's just say this. I would say that the New Testament says the Holy Spirit can be grieved and quenched. Again, the Holy Spirit indwells us to mark us, and marking us is how I take the sealing language of certain passages, sealed with the Holy Spirit. I think that refers to being marked, sort of marked out from others. I don't take it in terms of having some irreversible status on you. So I think the Holy Spirit indwells us to mark us as believers and to sanctify us and assist us in walking with the Lord. His presence doesn't guarantee that people will not turn from belief. Else the writer of Hebrews and other writers in the New Testament would have no reason to be concerned. The very fact that they're concerned that people not turn from the faith tells you, or at least it ought to tell you, that the sealing language of the Holy Spirit is not about making it impossible for people to turn away from the faith. Certainly the New Testament writers are not reading the language that way because they are concerned. So either we should, as it were, walk up to them and say, hey, Hebrews guy and, Paul or whoever else it is, don't worry. Don't you guys realize that once you have the Holy Spirit, that turning from the faith is impossible, so you don't need to worry. It's very obviously that's not what's going on in the New Testament. And it's I would say it's painfully obvious. Anyway, in Ephesians 4:30, given that little backdrop, in Ephesians 4:30, grieve not the Holy Spirit. We have to presume, and again, just reading it sort of gives us the impression that it is possible that the Spirit can be grieved. Further, and this is digging a little bit deeper, the grieving language of the Holy Spirit might come from Isaiah 63:10, because the language is the same there. They rebelled, they grieved his Holy Spirit. And the rest of the verse says, therefore he, the Holy Spirit, turned to be their enemy and himself fought against them. This is Israel in the wilderness wanderings, where God gets angry, at the Israelites for their reaction. They grieve the Spirit, they turn away, they rebel, all this kind of stuff. Well, again, if that could happen in the Old Testament, and if Ephesians 4 is quoting this passage about grieving the Spirit, well, that says something. It's possible that the grieving language does come from that passage, and if so, then the Holy Spirit can act in judgment against a person who abandons faith. That's just kind of scriptural math there. 1 Thessalonians 5:19, quench not the Holy Spirit. This is the same verb lemma, the one translated quench, as in Ephesians 6:16, where the fiery darts from the evil one are extinguished. Again, same lemma. It would seem that belief and the ministry of the Holy Spirit positively to a believer are intertwined. They are interrelated. That's another way of saying, if you want the ministry of the Holy Spirit to work out in your life, you need to believe. So we're back to square one again. Okay, you need to believe. If this is a concern to New Testament writers, that believers forsake their faith, they turn against and away from the God of Israel, from the gospel, against the gospel. That seems to be a very transparent concern in the New Testament. And for that reason, if that is a concern, and it's not hard to find, we truck through a number of passages in the book of Hebrews. If that's the case, then what does the Holy Spirit do? Well, the Holy Spirit could judge them. He could be the agent of judgment. And that doesn't mean, and it didn't mean in the Old Testament, that the Spirit of God never has a positive, ministry to that person. He certainly did with the nation of Israel. Why would we expect, on the other side, in the New Testament, for the Spirit of God to not also try to draw them back? Again, we talked about that in Hebrews as well. That one of the ministries of the Spirit of God is to work in the heart of a person to help them to believe, to keep them in the faith. But the Spirit can be quenched. The Spirit can be again, grieved. We don't really like to talk about these kind of verses. Again, it's largely because of the theology that sort of we have in our background that makes us look at these passages and sort of conclude that turning from the faith wasn't a real problem. That would have been news to the New Testament writers. Otherwise, why are they writing about it? And in the case of the writer of Hebrews, why is he hung up on it? Well, the answer is, the context, the persecution, just the hardship. This was a real concern. It was not a fabricated concern. It's not a theologically misguided concern. It's in the New Testament. And by virtue of it, the whole idea of inspiration, I would say it's a valid concern. So the bottom line is that, again, the writer of Hebrews, other writers are either genuinely concerned about people abandoning the faith, or they're not, or they're dumb, or they're just theologically inept. I don't think they were dumb or theologically inept. I think this is a real concern. So if people cannot turn from the faith, these concerns are illegitimate. The writers are making some sort of theological error. I don't think they're in error. If people can turn from the faith, then the presence of the Spirit is about something else other than guaranteeing that people can't turn away. Again, this is very simple, step-by-step logic, thinking about what we read in the text. I'll repeat it. If people can turn away from the faith, and that seems to be a big concern from certain writers in the New Testament, if they can turn away, then the presence of the Spirit is about something else besides guaranteeing that people who profess Christ can never reject that belief. It's pretty evident. Again, the writers are really concerned about it, so it would seem that we should take their concern seriously. We don't want the Spirit of God, who is, again, working to keep us in the faith. We don't want the Spirit of God to have to judge us, to have to chastise us, be the agent of chastisement. Maybe that's for our own good, because the Spirit of God will, as he did in the Old Testament with the Israelites who were cantankerous and rebellious across their history. The Spirit of God did, act on occasion, as an agent of judgment, but he also acted, on other occasions as the agent that God would use to draw them back, through various means back to himself.